Hello, I'm Mr. Goan, and today we're going to be having a look at finding percentages of an amount without a calculator. We're going to start off with some pretty easy percentages, things like 10%, 5%, 50%, but we're going to use those and a particular method so that we can calculate any percentage, ideally whole number percentages. So to start with, I've got a diagram here. Now our starting number goes in this top left circle here, and where it's marked start. Now, anytime we move right on the diagram, we're going to divide by 10. And if we move down on the diagram, we're going to divide by 2. So to demonstrate this, we're going to start with our beginning number of 100%. Now, dividing by 10 is one of our key skills. It's something that we all should be able to do, and it's something very easy to practice. It involves moving our decimal point one place to the left. Now on 100, you should see that's quite easy. 100 divided by 10 is 10%. Let's carry on along this trail. If we divide by 10 again, 10 divided by 10 is 1%. Now let's look at some of these down arrows. Starting back at our start position again, our 100%, when we go down we divide by 2. So 100 divided by 2 is 50%. Still falling down, 50% divided by 2 is 25%. And we've got this one box in the middle here that's got 2 arrows pointing to it. We've got 2 options here. We either start at the 10% and divide it by 2, or we start at the 50% and divide it by 10. And you should see that 10 divided by 2 is 5%, which is the same answer as 50% divided by 10. So what you've got here is a pre-generated table of values. What we've got is the whole number we started with, 10% of that, 1% of that, 50% of that, 25% of that, and 5% of the original. Now using this combination of percentages, we can find just about any other percentage. It's all a matter of knowing how to get to that number using our limited pool of numbers. So I've got 5 examples of that, and we're going to use this diagram, but we're only going to use the parts that we need. So, example 1 says to find 15% of 800. Well, knowing that we can only use 10, 1, 5, 50, and 25, we need to think of the largest number there that we can use. Now, the largest number we have that fits inside 15 is 10%. So we know we're going to need 10%, and then we still need to add on another 5%, so we can use our 5% as well. 10% plus 5% is 15%. Okay? So let's start with our diagram. We know we're going to need 10, we know we're going to need 5. So we'll start here now in the 100% and put our 800 in. Now, to get across to 10, we need to divide by 10. 800 divided by 10 is 80. Now we're going to drop down into the 5% box. 80 divided by 2 is 40. And now we can fill in our numbers. 10% of 800 is 80. 5% of 800 is 40. So 10% plus 5%, 80 plus 40 is 120. So we can say that 15% of 800 is 120. Let's try another one. Example 2 this time. Find 37% of 500. Now it's trickier this time because we've got an unusual number here, 37%. Looking at the percentages that we can easily find, the largest number that fits into 37 is 25. So we know we're going to need the 25%. We still have another 12 to find, so we know we can fit in a 10% in there. That'll take us to 35%. Now, 35, to get to 37, we need to add on 2. So we're going to need 2 1%. And that will make 37%. Now that's not the only method. Of course, you could find 10% and use 3 of them, then add on a 5 and 2 1s. Or you could find 40% and take away 3 1%. There's lots of methods to use for this. But let's use this one to start with. Now we want 37% of 500. We're going to use the 25, the 10, and 2 ones. So we're only going to fill in the ones that we actually need and the ones on the path to get there. So we'll start at 100%, which is 500. Now half of 500 is 250, and half of 250 is 175. Now let's look, we need our 10%. So 10% of 500 is 500 divided by 10, which is 50. And 1% is 50 divided by 10, which is 5. So now we can use our numbers. We know we have 37%, which is 175 plus 50 plus 5 plus 5. Now we can use a chimney sum for that, but we don't need to. 175 plus 5 is 180. 180 plus 50 is 230. And 230 plus 5 is 235. So we can say that 37% of 500 is 235. Now we can go even further with this and try something slightly different. Find 95% of 25. Well, we're going to be working a lot with decimals here, but there's multiple ways we can find this. Now, if we know we've got 100, 10, 1, 5, 50, and 25 as our options for percentages, we don't always have to add up to 95. We can actually say that 95% is 100% minus 5%. We can do a takeaway. And that's probably the easiest one to do for this particular question. But as I've said, there are multiple ways to do this. We could find 10% and times it by 9 to get 90%, and then add on 5%. Or you could go right to the bare bones and find 1% and then times that number by 95, which is the method that your calculators typically use. So let's start off. We want 100% and we want 5%, so we need this one in here and this one up here. We know already that 100% is 25. Now it's up to you which path you want to take. We could divide by 2, then divide by 10, or we could divide by 10 and then divide by 2. And you can see that ultimately you're doing the same calculations to get to the same answer. The difference is the path you take. So I'm going to divide by 10, which will give me 2.5. And then I'm going to divide by 2, which will give me 1.25. For those of you interested, the other path would have taken me to 12.5 and then 1.25. Both paths end in the same answer. But now we have everything we need. So we can say that 95% of 25 is 25 take away 1.25, which, using our chimney sum here, 25.00 minus 1.25, and I put these extra 0.00 in here as our placeholders. 0 take away 5 we can't do because we'll need to exchange, but there's nothing to exchange with here, so we carry on going. 5 drops to 4, gives us 10 in our 10ths box. Now we exchange from the 10, drops to 9, gives us 10 in our 100ths box. Now 10 take away 5 is 5, 9 take away 2 is 7, our decimal point lines up, 4 take away 1 is 3, and 2 take away nothing is 2. That gives us 23.75. 95% of 25 is 23.75. Another example. This time we're going over 100%. Find 135% of 65 pounds. And so this time you should also note we've got units. So we need to make 135%. That means we're going to need 100%. And again, we can do this multiple ways. I'm going to do this with a 25% and a 10% to give me 135. So I'm going to need my 10, I'm going to need my 25, and I'm going to need my 100. So we'll start up here. We've got 65 in our starting position. When we divide that by 10, gives us 6.5. Now I know I'm working with money, but because I'm just working with it, I'm going to leave off the extra 0. Now I know I need to get down to this 25, so I need to divide by 2. Half of 65 is 32.5, and half of 32.5 is 16.25. Again, we can actually show that working if we need to, or if you can do it in your head, that's fine. Now, we know we need our 100%, that's our 65. We know we need 25%, that's our 16.25. And we know we need to add on a 10%, that's our 6.5. Now again, we can actually use a chimney sum for this. We've got 65.00 plus 16.25 plus 6.50, which I've put in as a placeholder there. And we know with addition, we can just add everything up in this row. 0 plus 5 plus 0 is 5. 0 plus 2 plus 5 is 7. Our decimal points are all in a line. That's how we know we're adding the correct columns. So we drop our decimal point in. 5 plus 6 is 17. Now I know some of you put the 1 down at the bottom. I normally put it up here at the top. 1 plus 6 is 7, plus 1 is 8. We get 87.75, and that's £87.75. And we can say that 135% of £65 is equal to this. And since it's bigger than 100%, we can see that we have gone over the original £65. One last example. We're going to look for 17% of £10. Again, all of this is being done without a calculator. Now, 17% we can find using 10%, 5%, and two 1%. So we're going to need 10, 1, and 5. So we'll start over here at our 100% with our £10. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 1 divided by 10 is 0.1. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. So 17% of £10 is our 10%, which is £1, plus our 5%, which is 0.5 pounds, plus two 1%, which are each 0.1. And when we add that together, we get, I'll pop my pound sign in here, 1.7, and since this is money, it should have two decimal places, 0, £1.70. Now I hope that's helpful for you. As you can see, we don't have to use the entire diagram every time, and as you get better at this, you won't have to draw the diagram at all. If you remember that to get to 1%, we divide by 10 twice. To get to 50%, we divide by 2. To get to 25%, we divide by 2 twice. From just that knowledge, we can find most of this diagram. The 5% is a nice convenient midpoint, but we don't need it because we can just use 5 ones. I hope this has been helpful for you. Goodbye.